Now let's talk about some changes. So one thing we looked at is Dungeon Finder, and it feels like how we envision Classic, Dungeon Finder is not a good fit for our community.
NANI? You know, it's more or less because...
What the fuck is this?
What the fuck is this?
What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about?
What is this?
What the fuck?
That was kind of the first step that may have eroded some of that social fabric.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
You blew it!
Now, as people have gone through the experience of going back to vanilla, rebuilding those groups, relying on each other. Not wanting necessarily a random participant just to show up and then leave.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But today, you can do that in Shadowlands. You'll be able to do that in Dragonflight.
Take a big step back and literally fuck your own face!
It's a self-selected group of people who specifically want that different experience.
Yes.
Let's make sure that's what we continue to give them.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
So Blizzard's announcement of the random dungeon finder not being in Wrath of the Lich King Classic has a pretty big uproar in the community. And it's coming from both sides. You have the people who want the random dungeon finder, and you have people who don't want it. And it seems pretty split between the community. You have one side saying to leave RDF in, it would be really good to have it, it's not going to hurt anything. And the other side saying to completely take it out because that was the cause of all the social problems and ruining and degrading the community in the first place. So, you know, Blizzard really kind of stirred the pot and created a shit show. And it seems like they're kind of sticking to their guns with not giving us any random dungeon finder. But we'll see if that really lasts. So with this announcement and the divide it's causing in the community, it kind of brings a discussion question. From on one side, you know, people say RDF killed the community, while the other side says RDF, it doesn't have any effect on the community. But the question I kind of want to ask is, maybe the community, you know, hurt itself, degraded, changed over time, and it really wasn't the cause of RDF, and it's really just the community within itself. So that's what I'm really wondering about. So when it comes to me, though, thinking back and everything, playing Wrath of the Lich King back in the day, replaying and reliving through, you know, Vanilla Classic, TBC Classic, and seeing how everything's gone now, it kind of leads me more to believe that the community is probably the one who really hurt the social experience in the game and not a tool like Random Dungeon Finder. One of the examples would be the servers. What's really interesting is if you look at the life of the servers from very beginning up until this point, you know, right before Wrath launches, the servers have changed a lot. Of course, servers have died over time. It's kind of natural with MMOs. But the biggest thing that you can see is the population shifts between servers and faction imbalances too. Now, of course, sometimes the faction imbalance will happen. People usually want to play on what's more dominant of their faction, but you know, it doesn't seem like people want to play in a balanced faction environment really, which is interesting because that's kind of the social aspect of the game, right? And kind of the point of having like a horde or an alliance. If you want to actually enjoy having another faction to like see them in the world or fight them in the world or anything, just to like kind of be there as part of the experience, you know, the best thing would to have some kind of 50-50 balance, right? But that's not what people want to do. As we can all see now, when we look at server populations, basically we have these mega servers where like a huge population is on one server and it's only alliance, huge population on another server, only horde, and back and forth. And we can see this with a couple other servers too before it goes down to like just crazy imbalances of where it's like 80-20 or 70-30, things like that. Which, I mean, those can still be okay, but it's definitely a strong imbalance, especially if it's a PvP server. If it's a PvE server, I mean, it's okay. You can get away with it. It's just really more of like the fun social aspect of seeing another faction around. But on the PvP server, then that's when you can really feel it because, of course, the real PvP aspect of it. And there's only been a couple servers that really kept an even balance, right? Like Grobulus for the US servers, and I think Fireball was for the EU servers. One server out of the, like, you know, what, the 20 to 40 of the servers that were still alive. And so what's interesting with the mega server thing is there basically wasn't any kind of Blizzard involvement with that, right? There was no new tool. There wasn't really like a an incentive that Blizzard offered, right? It's not like they offered like, oh, if you transfer to this server, you get gold or boost or whatever. It wasn't anything like that. Blizzard didn't do anything to make a new thing. It was all purely just the players, you know. They wanted to play with their one faction that's dominant, and so they just hopped onto that server. You know, they didn't care about, you know, overloading one server with so many of the same faction or so many people, or having kind of like a nice like role-playing open world where you can see your other faction running around, or even care about world PvP either, if they, you know, if that is something they cared about. The players basically did it to themselves. And now sometimes people complain about it, like, why do we only have these 2 mega servers, what's going on? And I don't know, what can you really say except for that, you know, we did it to ourselves. We wanted to have huge servers with just our one faction, and that's what we did. And again, it didn't take any outside influence to do that. The players did it themselves. Another example from my viewpoint is examining the current Classic WoW community. Take a look now at how the Classic WoW community, you know, from beginning of vanilla to TBC now, you kind of really see how much different it was compared to back then. Now, of course, that will happen. You know, we're not going to be the same players, not the same people. Everything has evolved. But it seems to evolve to a less social experience still, regardless with how things are going, right? Take a look at vanilla. In the very beginning, everybody's excited for world PvP. We have it, we like it for a month. After that, we freaking hate it. Now most of the time, people don't even want to do world PvP. And that was an aspect of the game people would always say was great. And look how quickly it already changed. Of course, there's still people who like it, but I feel like for the majority of people, it really has changed from thinking and liking world PvP and always wanting to have it to like now they just don't want it at all. They want to avoid it. You know, you change layers, you change servers to PvE instead. So all that has changed, you know, even from vanilla's time. So now let's take a look at the arguments surrounding, you know, random dungeon finder. For me, when I'm thinking about this whole situation, regarding, you know, RDF and it hurting the social aspect and changing the community, things like that. Yeah, I think about how back in the day, because I played, you know, Wrath back in the day at the time. You know, I was like a teenager, but I remember it. The random dungeon finder was a tool that everybody was actually looking forward to. We were really excited to have it, you know, back at that time. You know, nobody was thinking anything negative, of course. It's like a shiny new thing. And also, I mean, it happened towards the end of the expansion too. You know, in the beginning, we still had to run everywhere. I remember having to run to these places to get inside of them, you know, like any other dungeon. Yeah, having that change was like really nice because, you know, like it is how it is now, right? Sometimes you get a group together, it takes like a half hour just to find people to do it, and then another like half hour for everybody to run there or something. So kind of time consuming. With the dungeon finder, it's a little more relaxed and automated. So that was something players wanted. Yeah, so basically back then it was definitely looked good upon to have that kind of thing. Of course, we wouldn't know anything else that would come with it. So, you know, during the years of having the random dungeon fighter, people did start to notice some kind of social changes, right? And it's basically social changes were around how the group experience was. Nobody was really kind of talking to get the groups formed up. You didn't have to run anywhere. So that kind of role-playing aspect is gone, which is fine for the most part, because most people probably think it's fun to do it one time, but when you do it a million times, nobody wants to keep doing it a bunch of times. But also people's attitudes kind of change too. You know, there's really kind of no gravity to like what you're doing in the dungeon, right? You know, for example, if you have like a tank who maybe isn't doing too good before Dungeon Finder, you would probably try to deal with it and try to make it work somehow. With Dungeon Fighter, people can just vote to kick him and just get a new tank, you know, so those kind of things will happen. You know, ninja looting could be more prevalent because someone could just take something and then freaking leave, and then nobody could really do much about it. I mean, you even just have like random vote kicking too. Like, what if there's someone was like AFK for 10 minutes? I mean, that could still happen normally though. But it's a little easier because now you just throw up the vote system. With RDF, you can throw up the little vote system to kick somebody, and it makes it way easier to kick somebody for whatever reason they want to do. While without it, it's only the group leader who can do it. So it's really up to him if he wanted to kick somebody or not. And judging how Classic even runs now, most of the time people won't really do it at least as quick, I feel like, compared to maybe how retail is now or how RDF evolved into, you know, back then, or with RDF, like if you're AFK 1 minute, they'll kick you. But with Classic now, like you can be AFK like 5 minutes and you probably won't get kicked yet. So things like that, it's like there's almost like less of a human element to you and more almost like robotic and automated. Another complaint is, no one talks. It's just you run in, you do your stuff, you leave. I mean, that aspect is kind of true, but I mean, also look at how dungeons are kind of run now. I mean, people still don't really talk too much unless you just need to kind of communicate something like with the boss or where to go or whatever. But I still understand that argument though. I mean, it does seem a little less talkative in like an RDF group than even now, kind of like in Classic. And so what's kind of the thing I find interesting with this whole ordeal though is it's almost like we're just repeating all of what the community kind of went through in the past, but just almost like hyper focused and really quick. So think about it, back in the day, we were tired of running around everywhere, forming groups, the time it takes to form them, all that stuff. And that's how why we wanted some kind of feature like RDF. And then we got it and we were happy for a little while until we started seeing some of the negative things coming around with it. And now fast forward to today, or Vanilla Classic releasing. We want Vanilla Classic with no changes, right? Nobody wants RDF or things like that, and we get that, and we're happy for a little bit with having that. But then playing the game for a while and having to run around in the same thing, so running around to all the places, the time it takes to find a group, all those kind of things. Now we're kind of wanting to have an RDF feature back in, just because of that quality of life, just to make things a little easier. And now by the time when Wrath is coming out, Blizzard says no, because the community before would say that was the downfall of like the social aspect, and now everybody's mad about it because after reliving through everything again, how it was basically back in the day, now we want to have it again. And Blizzard's sticking to their guns and saying, nope, you guys always complained that RDF was bad, so now you guys get to not have it and enjoy it in Wrath like that. So I find it pretty ironic that this flip-flop just kind of happened again, right? Like back in the day, like we're basically following the same pattern of what the players did back in the day as of now, basically. I mean, of course, we still have some hindsight of how everything went. And not everybody wants it. It seems really split on wanting it and not wanting it. But still, it's just really ironic and funny that now it's kind of like causing a little bit of a uproar and people want to have it back in after complaining for so long that RDF was a downfall and it's like one of the worst things in retail and all those kind of arguments. So as a little experiment, I actually wanted to try to survey the community and see what they thought about this issue as well, since it's so split. If more people favored to have it than to not have it. I did a little discussion post on Reddit to see what people, at least on Reddit, were thinking, and I even scrolled through some of the Blizzard forums as well to see what people are thinking there, because a lot of people on there already have forum posts talking about the Dungeon Finder back into the game, trying to ask Blizzard to put it back in. But first, I'll go over the Reddit comments for the post that I made and kind of go through and show you guys in some of the highlighted comments I saw what people are talking about, or to show what people's opinion on the topic. Here are some of the comments I found on my little Reddit discussion post. So here's one from Naughty188. It says, my daughter still plays retail and I regularly hear about things like the healer complaining about the run not fast enough, or the tank not geared well enough, or whatever the part way in just dropping group, like requeuing and getting a run again in 5 minutes, only to repeat until they get the run they're satisfied with. Yes, some would drop group in a run without RDF, but it was much less of an issue in my honest opinion than I have seen in retail. In Classic, Psalm, TUC, I have found that making a group for a run and being in a run to be much more socially active. I'm glad RDF is out. So this guy does not want RDF. Alright, the next one I have from Zanzibar85. Yeah, so here's the part I think, a good part from this paragraph that I think is pretty important to see. The game was already single player focused enough at that point, it didn't need to be more so. Also, I think RDF promotes the need for dungeons to be very easy and undertuned. So that's kind of a good point. I mean, I guess that's kind of what happened later in retail's life, right? Like, Dungeon Fighter is like the easiest way to do a dungeon, and then you have heroics, and then you have mythics. And even when you do mythics, you can't just queue for it. You have to make an actual group for it in retail, right? So I kind of understand that argument point. It makes sense a bit. I mean, I think originally in Wrath, it wasn't designed to be easier. Like, if you queue for it in RDF and then run to the dungeon, it's going to be the same difficulty. Nothing changes. But I still understand the sentiment. I understand where he's coming from. He says, if Blizzard follows through and actually makes heroics harder or adds mythic mode in Classic Wrath of the Lich King, all the RDF fanatics will complain that their groups can't do them and will want them nerfed. Yeah, so it sounds like this guy doesn't want RDF in the game either, as it's just gonna dumb down the content and make it too easy, and he doesn't want to play with that. He wants to play with harder content. That's what it sounds like. So that seems to be his reason for not having RDF. All right, so the next one. And this next comment: most people went in blind and enjoyed the moment back then. Now most people go in with calculators, wallets, and are usually dead set on efficiency, including myself. Then the efficiency part, because I always feel like I don't have enough time to play and get caught up worrying too much. Yep, that is pretty true. That's a good argument to point out. I mean, a lot of people now, or yeah, the community now is really hell-bent on min-maxing efficiency, you know, all those things, you know, playing with the meta spec. And basically it's like, if you're not doing those things, then you can't be in a raid or join it, or it's like, why are you playing like that? Like, it's useless. Let's not have this person in the group. It's almost like that kind of mindset. So I understand that. Sure. So I try to change that by doing whatever I feel like, and it worked for a bit, but I'm slowly slipping back, probably due to other players and myself just not having as much time as back then. Used to explore Azeroth with totally random strangers, like the airfield and the Iron Forge was usually inaccessible unless you glitched up the mountain. Stuff like that is my fondest memories in the game, not numbers, just my thoughts though. The mystery is gone and replaced with efficiency. Yeah, that's another good point too. The mystery is gone and replaced with efficiency. Yep. I mean, it kind of is what happened with the game and a lot of MMOs, right? It's not about exploring the world. It's just about getting the end game, raiding, doing big numbers. I mean, you're fighting, you're killing or healing or taking that damage and never getting hurt, and then getting the loot, you know, like a little loot piñata. So, I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of like how the design of the game has became, probably from TBC forward, really. But that's kind of, and that's how the community plays the game now, is rush the end game. Yeah, rush the end game, get all the previous stuff, you know, and start raiding, and then just rinse and repeat. I don't think it was RDF. A huge portion of the end game community revolves around raiding and PvP. There's no RDF for raids, and PvP is just, yeah, so it sounds like this person does not want RDF either. And so this person says he doesn't think it was RDF. So he's probably thinking it is the community itself that hurt the social aspect of the game, not Dungeon Finder. A huge portion of the endgame community revolves around raiding and PvP. There is no RDF for raids and PvP. It's just the way it always was. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's no raid finder and Wrath, right? And I guess RDF can kind of kill the social elements of leveling to a degree, but not everyone wants to spam RDF 1 to 80. There will always be questers and groups for group quests, etc. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of true to a point, except the problem is, though, I mean, we've seen it with Vanilla Classic and TBC Classic, that people want to just boost through when leveling an alt, right? They don't want to actually level the alt like the normal old way of questing and maybe doing dungeons by themselves. They will pay, you know, someone to boost them, right? Pretty classic, you got the Meridon boosts, Skullomance boosts, you know, in TBC you got Slave Pen boosts, Stratholme boosts, you know, and people pay for that, and they don't want to spend the time to quest up. They want to just AFK in a dungeon and have some mage boost them for a couple hours. I mean, I get it, but I mean, and also think like on private servers or even in retail too, to level up their new characters, they will just spam Dungeon Fighter because it's faster than questing. And actually, beginning of TBC, people were doing dungeon cleaves, which is like, I mean, it's not the automated process of a Dungeon Finder, but I mean, it's kind of the same aspect, right? Like, you're just spamming dungeons, and with the Dungeon Fighter, you can do the same thing, just spam dungeons to level up. So it's kind of the same thing, though. So I really feel like there's more people who will probably be drawn to spamming dungeons if it means it levels you up faster, for sure. They would definitely do it. Yeah, but this guy says he would not be affected socially by RDF much at all. Yeah, and again, I can understand that too. He doesn't really give reasons of why it wouldn't hurt the social aspect that much, but I think I understand why, because I mean, at least at the point of where the community and social and how everybody is social now, I mean, I feel like we're kind of less social now than we were back then, and that's just like the mindset of people in general. So I can understand that point of view. RDF isn't as good as you remember. It holds no one accountable, so anyone can sign up for what they want. I would just endlessly get DPS spec DKs at tank, and when we leave, giving them to debuff. I don't think it's gonna miss it. Okay. Yeah, so this guy does not care about having RDF in. He does not want him in. He's not going to miss not having RDF. The drama about this function is really just caused by people that play on private servers. They couldn't care less about being authentic to the game. They just wanted the easiest path. Easiest is not always the best. Taking the time to form a group leads to better groups. Better groups means more fun for runs. But when you have a good run with someone, you remember them. That adds to the community. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that happens to me when playing TBC. You know, I'll have a good run with people. Sometimes we're even a little talkative, you know, in the group chat too, just bullshitting around. And when we're kind of done, I'm gonna part ways. Sometimes we say, hey, let's add each other. Let's do some dungeon runs in the future. Now, honestly, I don't think I've ever reconnected with any of those friends I made. I think most of the time I just don't ever see them online or something. But it's still nice though. It's still nice that they'll like at least try and be like, hey, we had fun, you know, playing together. Let's add you on your friends list and let's try to do a dungeon run next time or quest next time or what have you. Yeah, actually they want the easiest path. The easiest is not always best. Yep. The players will always take the path of least resistance. It's true in any game. Not just MMOs, any freaking game. This has been a big part of my journey and while currently getting rid of boosts, another easy path to play the game. Yep. This is the best move. There's tons of groups now forming for lower dungeons. Yep. But yeah, a lot more people are being interactive. I mean, there's also the 50% buff going on right now, the Joyous Journeys buff. That could also be a reason, but yeah, probably both, probably a little bit of both. Trying to raid with my 70 alt, having a good 5-man runs gets me into raids with that guild, getting a good heroic together and chaining heroics that almost never happen with Dungeon Finder. Yeah, at least not with the same people. Next one. Simply just no. Yeah, I used to have plenty of fun interactions with RDF groups. More of RDF actually allowed me to do dungeons. Yep, so this guy wants RDF. He wants it because he likes the convenience factor, I'm guessing. And also time-saving factor of having the Dungeon Finder. In the min-max culture of TBC, it's significantly harder to actually run dungeons at max level. I probably did 1/30 of the dungeons in TBC Classic than I did in OG Red Lich King. Yeah, that's true. I understand that. I feel like that's more like kind of towards the beginning of the expansion than towards the end, just because, you know, towards the end you kind of get carried more. Usually people will have better gear, so it ain't too big of a deal, and then people kind of know how the dungeons are, so you know what you can and do and get away with. I mean, there's also details to it, right? I mean, it depends on what your class is and spec. You know, if it's something like a shaman, like in TPC, you're always gonna get invited, even if you're not that good damage because you have lust, right? But at the same time, if someone asks for like a mage or a rogue, they're gonna pick the mage, not gonna pick a rogue. Like, they'll never pick a rogue unless that's like the last resort option if they can. So I understand that. There's like some gatekeeping and min-maxing that kind of happens, even though, like, I mean, in a dungeon, you can totally do normal dungeons and heroics with a rogue and with a warrior and with the classes that aren't at the best DPS spec, because it really ain't that hard to do. But everybody always wants to do the best possible thing, the fastest possible thing. They don't want to play with the non-favorable classes and specs and stuff. So I understand this point. It kind of opens up more, makes it easier for people who are more casual, which is true, which is kind of the point of having a Dungeon Finder, right? This guy, the community did, yep, so he believes the community is kind of what ruined the social aspect, not Dungeon Finder. I honestly don't see how RDF could have made this game any less social at this point. If you have a guild you play with them, but everything else is just GDKP nowadays and quick badge runs. I don't see how RDF can make the game any less social at this point. Yeah, that's true. I agree with that argument as well, because I really feel like the game isn't as social, at least to how we thought it was. You know, wearing our rose-tinted goggles. I mean, it can be depending on like certain communities within the community, I guess, right? Maybe even like if you kind of break it down, you know, you can have the overall WoW community, you can have the community of a server, you can have a community of the guild, you can have a community of the faction. You know, you can break it down, right? It's not just one black and white issue. It's just layers of gray. But still, I mean, at least in my experience too, and then also comparing it back in the day, or even other MMOs, the game just doesn't seem as social now. It's not super social as an MMO. And exactly the same thing. I don't really see how RDF could really make the game any less social. Basically, his argument is, well, basically his last sentence, right? There is nothing social to be lost with RDF at this point. Yep, I kind of feel that too. I kind of agree with that argument. This one, RDF was great. Changed the way I played the game and helped me gear up for raiding back when gear score gatekeepers were denying public players from running anything. Oh, yeah, that's an aspect I forgot about. I remember the gear score stuff, which kind of dumbed down the requirement to get into like a heroic or a raid. They would just say, oh, gear score, you got that gear score? Okay, you're good. which is kind of silly because someone could just be like bad at their class, you know, or kind of like a bad spec setup or something, and then they would just take him anyways because they had a gear score, you know. I definitely remember that. I remember that being a thing, at least maybe towards the end of Wrath. I mean, I kind of didn't play the middle of Wrath, but I played the beginning and the end of it. In the beginning, I don't think gear score was a thing. I think back then we had to use an add-on for gear score. I don't remember if it was an actual thing in the game. But towards the end, yeah, when I was doing Trial of the Crusader and like doing Ice Cream Citadel, yeah, I definitely kind of show you gear score to some of these people before you go and do a raid. So yeah, that's true. Yeah, some gatekeeping for sure. And so yeah, so this guy wants to have RDF. It makes gearing up a little easier. That's true. I think the arguments against it are poor as they boil down to you won't make friends if you don't physically travel to the dungeon. I mean, yeah, I think some people do make that argument. I think the better argument is more like on the role-playing game perspective of it, right? Like when you play a role-playing game, you want to be immersed in the world. You know, the point of it to have fun in a role-playing game is to travel around and, you know, visit these different locations and see things and explore, you know, as part of playing any role-playing game. And I think that's the kind of aspect most people are kind of are arguing about, not so much like the talking, because people, yeah, because it's usually the journey to the destination is what people are talking about. That role-playing journey of running to a place and what happens along the way is kind of what people refer to. But it's true, in today's social climate of the game, I don't think it matters either way. In an age where we're all working and having families, RDF would be a welcome addition. In my opinion, it was the integration of all servers in the Dungeon Finder. Oh yeah, that's a very good point. I don't know when that happened, I don't remember, but that's a very good point. When you have every server being able to group up together, that can definitely kind of kill the social aspect. Just because, yeah, you're never going to see those people again. And it kind of also will help promote more bad behavior, toxic behavior, because people can just get away with it. There's no repercussion for doing it. It was alright when it was just your realm. Yep. Because when it's just your realm, it's just more of an automated process, really. Everything else is the same. So instead of screaming in LFG, now you just click a button and then you get paired with people. Once you were tossed into a group, people you're not likely going to ever see again, things start to go downhill. Yeah, even that Final Fantasy 14 has pretty much the same system, but a very good community. I have to conclude that it was the players and not the system. Yeah, that's very interesting. I can see that too, because I play some other MMOs, and communities across different MMOs are, of course, different. And yeah, if they have the same system, but they, you know, are more sociable, then yeah, I mean, can you really say it's the system that harmed the social and it's not just the community? So yeah, that argument makes sense to me, and it sounds like he wants to have RDF. And look at the community now without RDF. We got GDKP runs. Yep, gatekeeping, toxic behavior, boosting instead of leveling, and take a look at the actual looking for group channel. Ours is mostly full of trophy nonsense and even game related. Yeah, so that's pretty true, you know. We didn't, you know, during Classic, again, like, you know, during Classic's life, players made GDKPs. No outside force made us do it. We made it up ourselves. You know, the gatekeeping, yeah, we make that up ourselves. People being toxic, I mean, well, I guess that's just kind of WoW community in general, but that's online gaming. People are always stupid online. The boosting thing too, that's very prevalent, right? Like I said before, from you know, vanilla all the way to right now, people were boosting like crazy, just sitting in a dungeon having a mage AoE shit down, you paying them like 50 gold a fucking run. And yeah, sometimes LFG can get pretty bad sometimes. I think it depends on your server though, and like how slow things get. Yeah, RDF didn't cause anything to player base. It's like a good tool and abuse it the same way they've abused everything. I found great players that I talked to through RDF and had sucky experiences trying to find groups using the non-RDF channels. It's just some people don't want it and will continue to scream murderer every time it's brought up. Yeah. Alright, next one. The only logical take I've seen on RDF is that is make it server only. Yeah, that's true. I think if RDF is server only, that would be the way to do it. And I think for at least Wrath, it was server only. But I don't really remember. I mean, they could have changed it, like maybe at the very, very end of Wrath. But as far as I remember, I don't think it was cross server during Wrath's lifetime, or original Wrath lifetime. So yeah, if it's server wide, people are not anonymous and their actions matter. Tool itself would be great. Per server only, good way to meet new people on your own server, especially for those who struggle with social anxiety and might not even dare whisper someone for a group invite. Yeah, he's playing on Fire Mall EU right now. That's horrid. Seeing 15,000 players just vanish in a week has really made me sad. Yeah, I really enjoy the open world PvP here. Now I'm still able to do world PvP, but there are extremely few people to do any PvE content with. I was kind of hoping Blizzard would revert the server migrations due to it being kind of abused, but at the same time, good riddance to the players who are like this. Yeah, simple. Never put RDF in game, thank you. Yeah, he hates RDF. Doesn't want that shit in the game. Keep it pure. The community brought down the social aspect of WoW. Yep, so that's what this guy thinks. I agree. Solution? Restrict RDF to server only? Yeah, I had the same point. I had a fair point. You know, I think a lot of people are having this argument, or are probably on board with, you know, have RDF server only. If it's not server only, take it out. If RDF is server only, keep it in. That's a pretty good point. Yeah, WoW is a MMO, not a lobby game. Instant teleports to dungeons do not belong here. Yep. Again, like I'm talking about how, you know, yeah, it's an MMO RPG, you know, role-playing game. Part of a role-playing game is to run around and explore the world. Yeah, if you just teleport everything, yeah, it's like a lobby game, like Destiny or Conqueror's Blade or any number of lobby games where you have a social hub and then you just teleport to whatever place you're going to. Yeah, I think that Dungeon Raid Finder did not kill the social aspect of WoW, but it did hasten its demise. Okay, I think I kind of understand the argument there. I mean, of course, the tool itself is not going to just be the sole reason to hurt the social aspect. But, you know, it's like one rock on top of a huge rock pile, you know? This is one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another, until you got what we have now basically in like retail. Blizzard is big dumb. Nothing else to that, just Blizzard big dumb. Big dumb Blizzard, big dumb. And the incremental convenience features and catering to the loudest minorities killed it. We need to make the game more accessible. Well, we need to make it easier to obtain epics. We need even more subscribers. Slowly by road of the game away, RDF is the very beginnings of this way of thought. Yep, I see. Yeah, I understand the argument. It's basically just, yeah, the same thing. One thing leads to another, you know. That's one little grain of sand that built up a huge mountain, right? It's just, or snowball effect, that's really better to say, right? This is like just a little snowball going down the hill. And retail WoW is now the huge fat snowball that came to the bottom. Just everything slowly becomes a little easier and easier and easier out of sake of convenience and, you know, being friendly to every player, you know, those kind of things. I mean, and that's true. That's true. Those kind of things can kind of tear away at the game. At least for like what the Fate game was foundationally supposed to be. Pretty simple. RDF is good. RDF is good. Yep. So, and then the opposite, the community 100%. Or actually, no, that's the same thing. They're agreeing for the same thing. Yep, the community is 100% responsible for its own social destruction. And this guy, the community, I've played since 2005. I mean, I think if you played ever since the maybe vanilla TBC or Wrath, or at least Wrath, right? That's the argument is Dungeon Fighter. If you played at least the beginning of Wrath, I think most people will have that experience. You know, they can look at their own experience and then compare it to now, and really see how everything's just changed. And how things have kind of, and how like the history kind of repeated itself as well when it comes to these arguments and what we want for the classic version of WoW. See, also, like, everyone blamed RDF for 15 years, but now that we aren't getting it in Wrath, everyone is bitching about it, so that should tell you something. Yep, that's what I was saying and bringing up too. You know, if you play back then and you remember back then, people wanted RDF. And then after a while, you know, people got mad about it. They thought it was what ruined everything. But now playing through Classic again, everybody wants it back. So it's just basically a big whole irony soup. I used RDF all the time when it was implemented. It was a great way to quickly get gear and be closer to raid ready. It's a quality of life upgrade. Yeah, definitely, it's true. It's a quality of life upgrade. You know, that's kind of was the point of it, is to be quality of life, and that's what it did. No one talked in 90% of dungeon groups I did in Classic. That's just my anecdotal anecdotal experience, though no RDF is a major reason I'm not coming back. Ah, yeah. No RDF is a major reason I'm not coming back. So, wow. I saw that on the forums too. Some people will not come back because of RDF being gone. They straight up say, like, if RDF's gone, I'm not coming back. This is not the way Wrath was. And it's true. I mean, to an extent, right? Because again, RDF came at the end of Wrath, and if Blizzard is saying they're not going to have it at all, then it's like, yeah, that's probably not the Wrath that you want to play, and so they're not going to come back for it. Yeah, so those are all the comments I highlighted from Reddit that I thought probably made some good points, and also just try to show a nice good mix of people who are for Dungeon Finder and who are not for Dungeon Finder, and for their opinions on it and their reasonings of why they like it or don't like it. So I wanted to show that, to kind of have a sample of what the community thinks about it. For me, at least my opinion on how I think or what should happen with RDF or not for Classic is, my view of it would be that I think it should be in there. And there's a couple ways we could probably go about doing it. I mean, one way could be, if you want to try to keep it to like the original experience, maybe even though we're playing on the latest patch, right? Keep it out for most of the expansion until the time it actually came in back in the day, right? Which might have been what, Trial of the Crusader or some patch after that. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but I know it's at the end of the Wrath of the expansion's lifetime. So maybe as an OG experience, you could do that. You can have no Dungeon Finder in like the whole first 2/3 of the expansion, and then the last third of it, you know, pop it in there just kind of like how it was back in the day, with the same, you know, features and everything else that it was like back then. Maybe another way to do it, which could be a lot more alt friendly and new player friendly and just convenience of life too, is, you know, yeah, let Dungeon Finder be there in the very beginning, but change a little bit of who has access to it, right? So like my proposal would be to let there be a Dungeon Finder from basically level 1 to 70, or maybe 1 to 69, whatever would technically work better. And that way, you know, alts, you know, new players, people leveling up, it's easier for them to level up, you know, get dungeons done, be able to have fun with that. Especially when it's like later on in the expansion, when population kind of dies off and maybe not so many people are leveling alts. It'd be easier to level up and get those dungeon experiences done too, just to have like a Dungeon Finder in for at least those level ranges. But from 70 to 80, have no Dungeon Finder at all. Leave it to where everybody has to do things manually. And then again, even with that system, maybe by the end of the expansion, pop it in for level 80s as well. That way, which actually kind of makes sense, because once everybody's been doing the content for a while, you know, I'm pretty sure most people will not really care about wanting to like experience running to the dungeon for the 100th time, or finding the group manually for the 100th time, you know, once it's been like halfway through the expansion or something like that. I think most people would probably enjoy having the convenience of a Dungeon Finder at level 80, maybe some kind of change like that. And then of course, keep it server wide only as well. No cross server, stuff like that. That way you can keep everything within the same community, even though it's automated and kind of random, and you'll just get grouped up with random people. At least it's still in the same server, you know. So if you see Bobby Joe as a tank, you know, you might actually have him, you probably will have him again as a tank in other dungeons that you queue up for. You'll definitely be a lot more likely. Which is good, because then it can kind of help bring that community, and you can add them, you know, if you guys like each other, play with each other, for PvP or PvE or whatever, you know, for dungeons, raids, heroics, later on, you know, if everything's still within the same server. So that would be my take on how to implement Dungeon Finder. So yeah, I mean, overall, you know, the community is pretty split on it, you know, from everything I've seen on Blizzard forums, Reddit, you know, other YouTube videos. A lot of people are really split on having it and not having it, so it's kind of a hard issue to solve. I don't think it's gonna, I mean, it seems like Blizzard's kind of gonna stick to the guns. I think they probably will stick to their guns and not have Dungeon Finder, at least for the beginning of the expansion. If enough people start probably complaining about it, you know, like halfway through the life of the expansion, they probably might bring it back in, I think, because that's usually what they do. They will appease the community if there's enough complaining about it. But yeah, the community is basically split, and this is like an issue I don't think anybody will ever be satisfied with, you know. When it's something that's so split like this, where it's like 50-50, you know, you can't appease everybody. It's gonna be It's gonna be one side or the other, and I don't know, either side is just gonna have to take the hit and play the game with whatever comes with it. You know, if there is RDF and no RDF, you just gotta have to play it for what it is. You can't solve everybody's, you can't change it to everybody's liking. It's impossible. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, kind of a discussion video and a little analysis of the community over such a controversial topic. So I hope it was probably enjoyable for you guys and maybe help spark some good discussion for yourselves, and you can kind of see a good little insight of what the community is thinking on this. You know, I did. I thought it's definitely pretty interesting to see. I didn't think it would actually be so 50-50 split with a lot of these opinions, but it was cool to see. It was a good, nice little experiment. Anyways, if you guys like this, you know, feel free to like the video. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, like little discussions, analyses, you know, feel free to subscribe and let me know in the comments too if you do like this. I know I can make more of these discussions and analyses of the game, or any other MMO game for that matter, not just WoW. So yeah, you know, like, subscribe, all that good shit. I will see you guys later, so peace out, motherfuckers. Muchachos, adios.